I'm going to teach you a little lesson about money, okay? Money will not make you happy, young lady.
But it can buy me instead.
It can buy a watch, it can buy food, it can buy a good place to live, it can buy a purse for mama. Money can't buy happiness. You agree with that? So I want to teach you a little lesson. This is called depreciation. The lesson in depreciation, okay? They start printing money.
They print too much of it, your value.
If this is all the money printed on the planet, it has a value. That value is determined by what you and I think that is worth, okay? When we print more, this should drop the value of this. That is why Papa takes this pieces of paper that were manufactured, and I take this and I trade it for that. So the seller takes the money because they needed to make money, or so they think, and they give me this piece of property. When that goes down in value, this will naturally, the real estate will naturally go up in value. So that's why I tell you, don't lose my property if something happens to Papa, okay? Do not lose it. Take care of the property, okay? This, it can be lost, it can be burnt, it can be spent, it can be stolen. You can't steal that.
We were ridiculed by most of the financial community for saying you cannot marry the culture of an active investor, who we were, and a passive culture. And we said, why? Our clients use both products. Our job is to be agnostic to our clients.
Now, with Overledger platform from Quant, you can create and deploy enterprise-grade secure smart tokens for any use case on any chain. All of this with zero coding, and your tokens will always be blockchain agnostic.
So many people will miss out on XRP and QNT. With Web 1, we had Microsoft. With Web 2, we had Google with the Internet of Information. And moving forward with Web 3, you better believe we're going to have Ripple with XRP for the Internet of Value, and Quant with QNT for the Internet of Trust. But lately, there's a lot of talk from Gilbert Verdian about the institutional Internet of Value. What does that mean for you as a potential person thinking about getting into these digital assets, or you're a person who holds this? Consider smash that like if you haven't done so already. You're going to want to hear about these new key developments and why it matters to you. Let's get right into it. First thing is from X, and it's this. Shout out to Jack the Rippler. A lot of other people are sharing this as well, not just him. And it's basically this. He points out some key things here. What do we have? Well, for one, not exactly breaking at the moment, but Maxwell Stein, the director of digital assets at BlackRock, is set to speak at the Ripple Swell 2025 conference, of course, November 4th through 5th, 2025. Like it says, BlackRock, the handshake, of course, with Ripple. And as we see in the visual here, it mentions director of digital assets. He has quite the background. And as we zoom in more, basically, Maxwell Stein, member of the corporate executive COO executive team over at BlackRock. In this role, Maxwell helps drive the firm's digital asset strategy. And of course, it's the whole thing of implementing products focused on crypto assets, stablecoins, tokenized assets. He, of course, works closely with BlackRock's portfolio managers. Think about that intro you just saw about some of these key things. Area of emphasis will be on Xero Global Capital here in a bit. And of course, they changed their name later on. I want to show some visuals for you about this gentleman, Maxwell Stein. So for one, on Forbes, they did a showcase about him a little while back. He's the youngest member of BlackRock's digital assets team. He's been helping the $10 trillion giant achieve a number of firsts. Working with more than 200 BlackRock staffers, he organized the firm's first private equity crypto investment, and in August unveiled the firm's first technology integration with crypto custodian Coinbase Prime. The Canadian native started in crypto in 2017 and focused on Ethereum, of course, before joining China-based Xero Global Capital. Now, this is something I want to point out in regard to Xero Global Capital. On a basic search, Xero Global Capital, now known as Ryze Labs, is a venture capital firm specializing in blockchain tech and Web3 applications. It was founded by Matthew Graham and has a focus on connecting mainland Chinese capital, think about that, with transformative technologies, particularly in the blockchain and digital asset space. So with that said, keep some of these terms in mind. Here's why. We jump over to Ryze Labs. Well, check this out. This is their LinkedIn, investing in the blockchain revolution. And then when you get further down into it, what do you see right here? Leveraging our emerging markets. So for one, think about things like, obviously, Quant's Overledger. Leveraging all existing legacy systems. But we're on the topic of Ripple. And how about this for size? A project that most aren't even worried about or aware of. Clearpool. That was the first cryptocurrency I ever covered. The first utility-driven project I ever covered was on this channel back in December of 2021. I always found that interesting. I always found it interesting. Constant references of Clearpool to BlackRock and even Blackstone. And we'll establish a clear connection, no pun intended, for Clearpool and XRP. To take you further into this, I want to point out some other things. If you go to Clearpool's page, it says from them literally some of the information you see here. In the latest report from Ripple, at least at that time being, and BCG, which is Boston Consulting Group, who I've cited numerous times, they showcased a while back the rapid evolution of tokenization, transitioning from a mere concept to foundational financial infrastructure. Again, why is Clearpool highlighting Ripple? Well, it mentions tokenization promises a programmable, interoperable, always-on, instant, broadly accessible financial system. Key insights is what you see here. Tokenization of real-world assets are projecting to skyrocket from 0.6 trillion in 2025 to 18.9 trillion by 2033. My goodness. That represents a 53% compound annual growth rate. Leading institutions like JP Morgan with over 1.5 trillion tokenized transactions. Well, you also have Societe Generale. And we know about Societe Generale with their connections to obviously things like Ripple with XRP. But whatever the case be, understand this, everybody. Early transaction, or I should say traction, use cases like real estate can unlock up to $500 million to $1 billion in new capital through fractional ownership. And like it also mentions here, tokenization isn't just about upgrading tech, it's fundamentally reshaping business models. I couldn't agree more. And what it also mentions here, for decentralized ecosystems like Ocean, which is Clearpool's new blockchain that's coming out, this tokenization surge presents unparalleled opportunities. So for one, again, see how this all is coming together? I mean, I would reference it. Literally, we are. But again, like it says, dive deeper into that. Well, we're going to do that. And of course, they posted this back in April. Again, interesting to see how this is all playing out because Larry Fink has been noted to point out the significance of tokenized deposits and also capital market ecosystems. If you look into Clearpool, you will find out basically that they're one of the standout capital market ecosystems that are out there. And let's face it, they're still very, very low in market cap. Take you further into this. Here's how we established in the past, dating back to when I first covered Clearpool in December of 2021, what they had going on a while back with Hex Trust and what's mentioned here for Clearpool and Hex Trust in regard to what is referred to as wrapped XRP. Interesting. And we know that wrapped coins, wrapped tokens do represent a mirror of the original asset. For example, there's like wrapped BTC, there's wrapped Ethereum, there's wrapped you name it. But as we jump back into it, these things happened. And as we take you further into this, I want to point out this just real quick. Thank you so much for recognizing some of my in-depth analysis. I did cover roughly over 40 videos. That's actually 50 at this point, covering Clearpool since 2021. I get a little bit more deeper into Clearpool for you guys, and I've been doing it lately on the Patreon if you're interested in that. So to take you further into this, I want to point out this. Remember how we talked about Hex Trust? Well, back in December 1st, 2021, here's your highlight. Without even watching this video, you're welcome to watch it for 44 minutes if you choose to do so. Back then, Alessio Quaglini, the CEO of Hex Trust, and Robert Alcorn, CEO of Clearpool, had an interview with Alessio discussing Hex Trust's institutional custody service, referred to as wrapped XRP, custody funding raises including investments from Ripple, and like it says, working with Clearpool to provide DeFi services to institutional clients. My goodness. Like, as I always mention, boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew. Because there is your proof. There is something there that most weren't even aware of for all this time. And take you further into it, let's jump over, to the recent development from Quant Network. Gilbert Verdian points this out. He says, Quant Fusion secure multi-ledger rollups for the institutional Internet of Value. Shout out to Jesse over at Apex Crypto Consulting NFA. He's pointed out that Ripple is the Internet of Value and that Quant is the Internet of Trust. I have as well. But he feels as though that, for example, the unified ledger isn't Quant. And up until recently, I didn't agree with that until I thought about it more. He's right. Because Overledger in itself sits literally, it's in its name, over everything. To me, that's more significant than having the title of Unified Ledger or Shared Unified Ledger. However, we're all learning. Even I myself will never stop learning, right? Interesting to see, once again, the terminology change here. So we went from Internet of Value now to institutional Internet of Value. I'll mention just a couple things here and we'll jump into this next part. Current layer 2 rollup architectures typically operate on a single chain, bringing same fragmentation and limitations of a layer 1 in a world where networks are inherently interconnected and interoperable. They foresee what's going to happen near future, but with Quant Fusion, they can begin that journey today with new layer 2.5 architecture consisting of multi-ledger rollups, securely and seamlessly bringing corporates and institutions on chain. Fusion enables multi-ledger rollups to span multiple layer 1 blockchains, and of course preserving privacy, unifying fragmented assets, so on and so forth. But look what he says on the bottom, as in Gilbert Verdian. It's purpose-built for internet scale networks and enterprise environments. Fusion allows tokenized assets on private blockchains to safely, seamlessly interoperate with public ones. So when we talk about the private ones, what about your JP Morgan, like your JP Morgan coin? Have you seen that video recently? I think it was highlighted over at Paul Barron Network, where Paul Barron shares a interview with Brad Garlinghouse, where Brad Garlinghouse is like, I don't even understand the point of JP Morgan coin. Yeah, I get it. I get your frustration, Brad. But now when you look at this quote from Gilbert Verdian, well, again, draw your own conclusion to the significance of Quant Overledger. And like it says, it's a breakthrough. Unlocks trillions of private markets, tokenized money, regulate digital assets, enable them to run securely across blockchains while meeting the strict privacy, security, and compliance standards required by institutions. Is this where 99% of what is called crypto goes away? Because when you look more into things like even Quant, they don't even consider themselves a cryptocurrency. Does even Ripple consider itself a cryptocurrency? I mean, draw your own conclusion, but I think the terminology here is worth sharing. Take it to this next part. Let's establish more of a paper trail by connecting some things of this quote of the Internet of Value. For one, Brad Garlinghouse, June 27th, mentioned this. He says Ripple dropping, of course, their cross appeal, and the SEC is expected to drop their appeal. But basically speaking, Ripple's looking to build the Internet of Value. What about more about this topic of the Internet of Value? Dates back to January 25th, again, 2021. And like it says here, they added 100 plus new faces to the team. I mean, at this point, thousands, right? And like it says here, no matter what, we'll stay true to our mission of building an internet of value. Wow. How about this other statement? All the way back to 2017. Brad Garlinghouse points out, proud to have led Central Bank Summit, where Ripple gathers central banks from around the world to discuss the next generation of payments. Together, we'll drive the internet of value. So now we have examples of all the way back to 2017 about the internet of value. And now recently we have from Gilbert Verdian, what? The institutional, just double check this again, like he says here, institutional internet of value. So that's interesting to me. And if anything, paging Jesse over at Apex Crypto Consulting, my friend, you might want to look more into that. And I say that politely because we're going to do some collaborations here again soon. And that's going to be cool. All right, we're going to get further into this. So when we do, let's jump back to Gilbert. He points out July 29th, institutional internet of value. Okay? And again, I think that's so important. As we jump further into it, as you saw from Grant Cardone, he was talking about cash flow, right? I give you guys these intros for a reason. Cash flow management. Think about this terminology. Smarter cash flow for improved business finances. I mean, I think that's worth sharing. Take it to this next part. I want you guys to see some things here. And for one, it's this. Like it says, programmable money management. Leverages programmable money by presenting an opportunity to transform and automate cash flow management to make funds work smarter. And how about this? The orchestration of it all. Literally from the Quant network. It's called quant.network/cash-flow-management. Intelligent money enhances efficiency and accelerates growth. And like it says, ensuring that businesses always have funds available at the right time can be the difference between settling invoices and slipping into the red. By embedding intelligence into money, cash flow management can be automated according to business logic, alleviating the stress on time and resources, which enhances visibility. And as you see here, it's how it all comes together. But here's where your key highlight should be. Back to the topic of cash flow. On that second step, it says set smart payment scheduling, automate and adjust payments based on real-time cash flow conditions. Wow. What else do we have? Well, as Billy Mays once said, there's more. We're going to take you over to that. And here it is. Are you aware that SIBOS 2025 is going to be coming up here soon? And like it mentions, Quant Network's delighted to be part of it. It's going to take place on September 29th to the 2nd of October. Mentions here the Quant team will be on hand to discuss how Europe's banks and payment firms can harness our programmable settlement. Think about that for a moment, okay? Their settlement in regard to what specifically? Well, the shift from traditional rails to tokenized money, for example, and digital assets. But again, programmable settlement infrastructure. Who's part of that infrastructure? So Quant's going to be at stand 13, and I think that's important. It says get in touch. They posted this literally just the other day, July 29th. Take you further into this. I want to share some of these key things about why this is a big deal based off of a lot of the things that we got into in regard to harnessing programmable settlement, etc., etc. So you're going to see a little bit of B-roll, but I want to get really deep into why this is important. The programmability aspect, in my opinion, from what I have gathered, refers to the ability to automate and customize financial transactions using smart contracts or programmable logic. This can include, and is not limited to, automated settlements. So, for one, transactions can be programmed to execute automatically based on predefined conditions. For example, payment upon delivery confirmation. We know that through tokenization, we can convert traditional assets like bonds, for example, into digital tokens that can be traded or settled on blockchain networks. Robinhood is currently implementing this as we speak into their platform. But how so? It's through compliance and security. Quant, for instance, can embed regulatory checks and fraud prevention directly into the transaction flow. How do we know this? Well, for one, it's one of their key products, which is Quant Authorized. Quant's infrastructure aims to bridge the gap between legacy systems and new digital finance paradigms, allowing institutions to retain their existing infrastructure while adopting innovative capabilities. This is where Overledger plays a pivotal role. We will analyze that role. We will uncover the role of Overledger, leveraging, of course, existing legacy systems. Yes, Overledger is key to harnessing this infrastructure by providing a layer of interoperability that connects disparate systems that are both legacy and blockchain based. Overledger acts as a middleware that enables cross-network communication. How so? Well, in an example, it basically allows legacy banking systems to interact with blockchain networks without requiring a complete overhaul of the existing infrastructure. Now we know, unless you're new to this, that this has been noted for general knowledge about Quant, and that Overledger supports different data formats and means across networks, of course ensuring seamless integration because Quant has API-driven solutions. But with tools like Quant Flow, which is a programmable digital money platform built on Overledger, well, that's going to enable banks to function in a way they can completely have API integration to automate payments, settlements, and compliance processes. This includes features like Quant PayScript for programmable payment scenarios and pre-built templates for tasks like automation or treasury management. By integrating with existing systems, Overledger allows banks to incrementally adopt tokenized money and digital assets rather than requiring a full migration. This hybrid approach is likely what Quant will showcase at SIBOS 2025, demonstrating how traditional rails can evolve into more efficient, programmable systems, which brings us to the two elephants in the room, and that is QNT and settlement with XRP. What's the connection, you may ask? Well, Quant Network's native token, which is QNT, is primarily used to access and operate within the Overledger ecosystem. It serves as a utility token for paying transaction fees, accessing services, and ensuring network security. However, QNT itself is not necessarily a settlement asset. It's more of an enabler for the infrastructure. A lot of you are new to this, so watch this quick demo that shows Quant's Overledger switching to Ripple's XRP for real-time gross settlements.
Quant's demo application showcases Overledger's API and provides an example of how to build an application with the client side and server side using Overledger 2.0. Overledger 2.0 uses OAuth 2 to authenticate API requests. This token will be used in the authorization header of your API calls to Overledger. The demo application showcases the single transaction and linked transaction features, as well as enabling the creation of subscriptions, which receive status updates about transactions submitted to a DLT via a callback URL. For single transactions, first select a DLT, enter an origin ID, a destination ID, and a destination amount. Once done, click Create. The demo app will show an API output screen to demonstrate the steps that takes place each time an API call is made to Overledger. The API output screen has been slowed down for viewing. Accepting the DLT transaction fee will initiate the signing of the transaction and then execute the transaction through Overledger. The details of the transaction can then be viewed and subscribed to receive status updates to the callback URL. Subscribing to the transaction, Overledger will return a subscription ID, where clicking on transaction details will call the MDAP transaction API to retrieve status updates from Overledger, and clicking on full details will search the DLT for the transaction information. For linked transactions, select the DLT that the initial transaction will be on, and which DLT will have the audit of the transaction. The initial transaction will follow the same flow as the single transaction, and once it has been executed and subscribed to, transaction updates will appear on the subscriptions page. Once the transaction is successful, an audit button will appear on the subscriptions page that will initiate the audit transaction creation flow. On the subscription page, we can also unsubscribe from receiving updates if we wish.
In regard to my mention of the Quant Network demo from a couple years ago showing Overledger switching to XRP for settlement, well, this aligns with Overledger's capability to facilitate multi-chain interoperability. In that demo, Overledger showcased its ability to route transactions across different blockchains, with XRP being used as a settlement asset due to its design for fast, low-cost cross-border payments. But XRP Ledger, as in the XRPL, is definitely known for its efficiency in handling international transactions. And that means complementing Quant's goal of modernizing settlement processes. However, settlement with XRP is not mandatory, but it is one of many options. Overledger's flexibility means it can support settlement in various assets, depending on the use case. However, XRP is clearly ideal for cross-border payments due to its speed and low fees, as demonstrated in that particular demo. We will talk about, of course, stablecoins, and I know that for many, stablecoins is not something that gets a lot of people too excited, but you have to keep in mind that assets like USDC or EURC could be used for stable value settlements. Native tokens of other blockchain networks are integrated via Overledger, and they would use, of course, their own native tokens. Even fiat-backed tokens like JPM coin would have tokenized versions of traditional currencies that could also be settled. It's just a matter of time before you hear more from Quant regarding that. There's just too much out there to dismiss, as we have pointed out the JP Morgan connections on this channel for a few years now. However, let's get back on topic regarding the choice of settlement asset and how it would depend on the specific needs of the banks or payment firms involved. For instance, European institutions might prefer EUR-based stablecoins or tokenized euros to align with local regulations and currency preferences. Now, I know this seems like speculation based on the SIBOS 2025 context, but Quant is likely to emphasize practical applications of its programmable settlement infrastructure, and to me, this just makes sense that they, as Stan 13, along with the team, might demonstrate, for example, live integrations on how Overledger connects with legacy systems and blockchains like the XRP ledger as shown in that demo. And that brings us to this. It's the use cases of Overledger and how that would display and how it would look. Examples, for example, of tokenized money markets like bond tokenization or digital asset settlements, in my opinion, would be highlighted. Quant is a different form of scalability. For example, how the infrastructure handles high transaction volumes, potentially leveraging XRP throughput or other networks. For XRP, it's plausible that Quant will continue to explore partnerships with Ripple for the XRP ledger or similar platforms. However, the Overledger broad interoperability, you have to keep in mind Quant isn't locked into XRP since it can adapt to the ecosystem's needs, whether that involves Ripple's technology or competitors like Ethereum, Hyperledger, etc., etc. All right, welcome back. So basically it's like this. Remember how we talked about the whole thing of Microsoft Web 1, Google Web 2 with the Internet of Information, or where we go with Web 3 when it comes to the Internet of Value and, of course, the Internet of Trust. Those are literally the slogans of both Ripple and Quant. Shout out to Jesse over at Apex Crypto Consulting NFA. Please give him a follow. He has straight alpha all the time. But he says Quant, not just operating system, but Microsoft Windows on steroids and growth hormones. It's the key to interoperability in the fourth industrial age. We're going to listen to this from Jesse. He always has great perspective. Less than a minute. We'll be right back. Here we go.
So first of all, what is Quant? Quant is an operating system for the fourth industrial age. It is the operating system. Okay, I know I'm going to say stuff that's going to sound crazy, but I'm going to show the proof. So Quant is the operating system for the fourth industrial age. So it's like Microsoft Windows, but on steroids. I should say on steroids and on growth hormones, okay? Anybody that's been in bodybuilding, you say steroids, but there's something even stronger than steroids. It's growth hormones. Some guys even take growth hormones. It's insane, right? But Quant is the operating system, Microsoft Windows on steroids, and we could say growth hormones too. It's insane. So Microsoft Windows was the operating system for the third industrial age, for the information age, and it was the main operating system. Probably 80-90% of the computers ran on Microsoft Windows, and it gave us interoperability in our computers, and that's why your computer turned on. Is you push the button and your computer turns on. It's because of the operating system, okay? So first of all, what is Quant? Quant is an operating system for the fourth industrial age.
Yes, I couldn't agree more with Jesse with some of those statements. Let's take you over to this next part, why it matters to you. What you see here is from Raphael Auer, and this is from LinkedIn. He's the head of the Eurosystem Center for the Bank for International Settlements Innovation Hub. Happy to announce just 3 weeks ago, roughly, Leap Phase 2. Again, this flew under the radar. And like it says, together with Swift, NEXI Group, Banca d'Italia, Eurosistema, and Banque de France, and Deutsche Bundesbank. We're exploring the implementation of post-quantum cryptography in a European payment system. And of course, he has his congrats that he gives, but basically it's called Project Leap. Maybe you get tired of hearing all these projects, but I'm not. I look at it from the perspective that we want everything to be, as the saying goes, future-proof, right? Don't want to come to the situation where everybody, I guess you could say, becomes wealthy, and then we all get rug pulled because it started to break, right? Nobody wants this stuff to break. And as you see, all those key ones listed there. Now, the point I want to get into is where it mentions specifically NEXI. And I covered NEXI a few years ago. There's some other people that I'm networked with, like King Channing has also covered NEXI. Shout out to King Channing. Give him a follow as well. He's got consistent quant updates, probably more than I do at this point, right? So if you want some of those consistent updates, Channing is your guy. Give him a follow over at King Channing. You'll be glad that you did. All right, here's why we want to highlight NEXI. NEXI, SPA, is formerly known as Istituto Centrale delle Banche Popolari Italiana, and it's ICBPI. It's an Italian bank that specializes in payment systems such as NEXI Payments, and of course, NEXI Payments, formerly known as Cartesi. The bank has specialized as a central institution of Italian Popular Bank. All right, so this institution has a robust history. It dates back to 1939. We have obviously SIPA connections. And how many times have we talked about SIPA and Quant? All right, they have revenue of 3.5 billion, and they have a net income of 167 million. Banks to use Algorand. Yeah, we're going to talk about Algorand for just a brief moment. Banks to use Algorand, public blockchain for Italian digital guarantee platform. This was, of course, shared back in 2022. Think about that for a moment, you know. And also, don't ever forget that Algorand, of course, obviously has ties to Bank of Italy because, let's face it, you have literally, was it the CEO, has real deep connections to all this. But here's your aha moment. How many times do we talk about Ripple? How many times we talk about XDC? How many times we talk about Quant when it comes to connections to R3? Are you even aware that even Algorand has something going on too. So in that regard, I want you guys to see that this Italian digital guarantee platform that we just were talking about, like this one's kind of hard to pronounce, does include Bank of Italy and insurance regulator IVAS and 31 financial institutions. The solution also uses R3/4 enterprise blockchain. So Algorand has a plug to this? That's interesting. All right. Take it further into this. Here's why it's so interesting. It's because Algo, according to Smoke, shout out to her brother in space, Smoke, Algo definitely has this thing going on with MiCA. And when we talk about MiCA, we talk about compliance. We talk about compliance, well, you know where we're really going to go. So Algorand was in fact a while back chosen as the public blockchain, like it says here, to do what? Support, basically, public blockchain to support digital guarantees platform, and of course Italy. And boom, like it says, Algorand. Well, is that it? No, not quite it. The other thing I want to jump into is I want you guys to see the other highlight that literally came from Algorand at least a while back. And it mentions here Coinbase. Remember at the beginning at the outline, or of the outline, we saw that gentleman from BlackRock and his ties to, like, for example, what BlackRock's going to do with Coinbase Prime. Well, look at this. Coinbase notifying European users of the restriction of stablecoins that don't meet MiCA requirements. Why would they want to be doing that? It says on Algorand, 2 options are fully MiCAR compliant and can be legally used in the EEA by 450 million people. So that's interesting. And again, another reason why I want to point some of these out, excuse me, because again, this was the last post at the end of last year. What happens at the end of this year when it comes to compliancy, especially with MiCA? And as we blow this up, you'll see a little hint of things to come, because at that point it was about the MiCA/MiCA, however way you want to pronounce it, changes to stablecoin services. And of course they had restrictions at that time, but again, the whole thing of, like they point out, currently expect we will have to restrict services for the following assets: Tether, Pax, PayPal USD, GUSD, Yen, and DAI, right? And again, it's the review of that. Now, I think still for the most part USDC will be fine, and also some of these other ones, like I think PayPal USD will be fine, as we know that they went with Stellar recently, or Stellar built the infrastructure for Circle with USDC, because we also know that Stellar or Circle used to literally be called Stellar USDC. Again, I just think that Stellar is going to be more than fine. As I take you further into this, I want you guys to understand this. I'm going to play this little brief video, and it's basically going to highlight, give proof to you about Quant and NEXI. So I'm going to play that. We'll jump back here in just a moment. All right, welcome back. Like I said, it was real quick. So here's another thing I want to point out in regard to Quant. Remember, again, the terminology. In my own terminology, I point out to you guys that basically speaking, Quant Network, Ripple, and even, to be fair, like maybe some of these other ones tied to ISO 222, but at least with those two, you're not just investing into like utility tokens here, right? You're investing into the next era of the internet. And how do we reference some of this? Some of the new terminology. Introducing QuantNet. QuantNet is the programmable money infrastructure that enables banks to deliver programmable settlement, tokenized deposits, MMFs, and securities. I mean, my goodness. Like, I really feel as though that it's interesting to see the terminology. Now, again, you may think, well, big deal. Here's why it's a big deal. Why would you pull this information? Yeah, they pulled this. What I just showed you, thank God people like, maybe I shouldn't mention who I got it from, but anyway, thank God to you, sir, you know who you are, who shared this with me. Thank God there is people like this, because, again, we want to know why they pulled it. So again, it says, apologies, the page you have requested cannot be found. I mean, how many times have we seen that from Quant Network? Why is that? Maybe because they were like, realizing that under NDA, they were too quick to jump the gun? Could be. And, for example, what is net short for? Well, obviously, can be shortened form of internet. And, of course, as we get further into this, keep in mind that even from the Quant Network, like it says here, institutional money in transition, real-time, programmable, and sovereign. And I love this visual. The Quanternet. You may feel as though that it's just XRP for the finternet, the financial internet. I think Quant's also part of that mix. I guess this is where I agree to disagree with Jesse of Apex Crypto Consulting, and that's okay. But yeah, the Quanternet, right? Take you further into this. How about this for size? The whole idea of being able, like Quant Network pointed out recently, to integrate seamlessly with your stack. Quant Flow connects to all your businesses, basically, bank accounts, stable coins, and platforms like Xero, QuickBooks, and HR systems. Access real-time dashboards, automate across entities, and remove intermediaries with direct programmable connectivity. Now, this part about QuickBooks and Xero, we're going to jump into that here for a brief moment. So for one, here's Xero. And as you see, Overledger integration. Think about this. Xero accounting. Yes, accountants doing their accounting. 2,500 other apps in seconds for those AI agents. That's interesting. All right. Remember how we talked about Intuit? Well, I drew this orchestration for you to give you some examples. And what do you see here? Some pretty awesome examples. You see QuickBooks from Intuit QuickBooks. So shout out to Rue Black, paging Rue Black. You might want to share this with some of his Zebek coverage. But as you see here, Intuit QuickBooks, kicking it over to creating an invoice, kicking it down to Overledger to make the API call. Then Overledger prepares a basic token deployment transaction, kicks it down to Intuit QuickBooks, create a bill, kicks it back up to updating that bill from Intuit QuickBooks to Overledger to sign transaction, and then kick it back over to Intuit. Why? Because maybe that person who is what? An accountant might want to create a sales receipt because, let's face it, he might be from Xero. See how it all comes together? I think you do. And as we get more into it, you see where it says, from the Quant Network, the corporates, welcome to finance that moves like the internet. We've all worked hard for money. It's time for money to work hard for us. Couldn't agree more with that statement. And a little bit more on the topic of cash flow. Again, back to Grant Cardone. So cash flow automation, I wonder what that's going to be all about. Well, optimize your working capital by programming payment triggers based on shipment, invoice approvals, or revenue thresholds. Now, this part about shipment, think about how both Quant and XDC will go hand in hand. Think about how the UK government, especially through UK Parliament, has specifically highlighted XDC. If anything, I'll give you guys an end screen card about why that's important. So at the end of the day, even these other mentions of tax optimization and, like it says here, automation, program tax rules to auto allocate revenue for VAT, file reports, etc., etc. Again, all about compliance. Take you further into this. I want you guys to understand this on a basic search. What will a cash flow market be worth by 2030 if it was tokenized? Don't take me for my word. Cite one of the biggest consultancy firms there is out there. McKinsey and Company states they have estimates that the market capitalization of tokenized financial assets, including cryptocurrencies, yes, cryptocurrencies, not just stablecoins, everybody, also cryptocurrencies, could reach approximately $2 trillion by 2030. They're pessimistic about the scenario, and it suggests $1 trillion, while the optimistic scenario projects up to $4 trillion. All right. Even Chainlink had a report referencing insights from 21Co and a study from Boston Consulting Group. Remember how we mentioned them at the very beginning of the outline? And like it says, BCG, forecasts the tokenized asset market could soar to, hey, you read it right, 10 trillion by 2030. So these things are always worth pointing out. And as I take to the next part, back to Grant Cardone. Why? Cash flow is king. Listen to this. We'll jump back here a little bit. I know it's quite the deep dive. That's what I do. Here we go.
This is inflation simplified. This is what they don't teach you at school, right? $1,000 in 1950 and 8 is 1960 is $1,000 in 2018. The difference, however, is this bought this product right here, okay? And by 2018, it didn't buy the same product. It bought 1/8 of the products. Okay, now what does that mean to you? That means cash is shit. Right? Because what happened to these products? These products went up in price. These products went up 8 times while money went down. Or that went up and this stayed the same. However you want to figure it out. But cash is not king, folks, okay? Cash is not king. In fact, you'd have probably been better off buying $1,000 worth of real estate back in 1960 and getting rid of your dough. Because what do you think that piece of property would be worth today if it was in a decent location? My name's Grant Cardone. You're in the Cardone Zone. We challenge the way you think about the economy.
You know, the way I look at it is, think about it. When he's talking about investing in some of this real estate many years ago and what's worth now, well, what about moving forward with a tokenized representation of that real estate? Now, of course, there's some real standout tokenized platforms like Proppy, Relio. On this channel, we cover Relio since 8 cents. And of course, different situation with Relio. They decided to do what? Go against what Grant Cardone mentioned and start printing more Relio. That didn't work out too well, but now they got this new thing going on and maybe they finally stop. Call it FUD. It is what it is, just being real about that, right? But the bottom line is tokenized representations of all this, whether it's real estate, you name it, right? Take you further into this, I want to point out something else that is definitely worth sharing. Let's take you over to coinmarketcap.com. Why? Well, here's basically why. So what we see here is understanding some key things here. Like, for one, what is 1/10 of a trillion? Well, that's easy. That's $100 billion, right? Well, do we have any examples of anything on here that'd be roughly 1/10 of 1 trillion? And the answer is yes. It's basically Binance's BNB. And the only utility of Binance's BNB really is to get a discount for BNB or for Binance, right? Unless something changed that I'm not aware of, and I'm not trying to act like I'm a know-it-all, but I mean, I can learn some new things just in case you know about that. But whatever the case be, here's what's important for you, okay? So I want to point out this. When we talk about things like Quant, keep in mind that Quant, right, like it says here, QNT, currently speaking, could change by the time you get this video, $107.13. But you see, for example, BNB, currently $736.81. So show the price of Quant with the market cap of Binance's BNB. And you'll reach the conclusion that this would be about a 66x for QNT, would bring the price to 7,063. That's not too shabby. And you may be asking, well, why get into something like that? Well, again, back to this cash flow. Again, for me, this is just one portion of Quant. This does not embed everything of what Quant does. So when we talk about significant buzz around potential tokenized real-world asset RWAs, including those related to cash flows and their projected market value by 2030, understand that this is big. And more importantly, it's also recognizing this right here. And back to Ripple. Because on July 29th, they have this announcement, literally from Ripple.com, and most people miss this. It's how traditional finance is investing in blockchain. And what you're going to see here is definitely worth pointing out because it's going to be I don't know, in my opinion, really, really interesting because, again, when you get further down into it, points out a shift is undeniable. Traditional finance is making a decisive move into the digital asset space. Blockchain unlocks cheaper, faster, and more accessible services and opens up doors to new finance use cases. Yeah, I would say so. And how about this? Remember I talked about institutional internet of value? Look at this. Institutional blockchain adoption and demand is quickly ramping up. And it cites some other things that we talked about. But this time around, instead of citing things like with Chainlink and, for example, what you saw from, what was it, McKinsey? Well, you see this from Boston Consulting Group. Once again, a new report about stablecoin transaction volumes reached 700 billion per month. My God. In early 2025, and Boston Consultancy Group projects nearly 19 trillion tokenized assets by 2033. So now we're even higher than what I showed you in those examples. Ripple's own research, yes, now this time Ripple, not Chainlink, nothing against Chainlink, found that 90% of global finance leaders expect blockchain to have a significant or massive impact on finance in the next 3 years. So remember how I was talking about, like, well, if we only did 1/10 of this, or, you know, if this company only captures so much of this, well, who leads the charge when it comes to blockchain? So, you know, we could try to lowball it all we want. So for some of you guys who are the real gung-ho people out there, they're like, you know what? Yeah, you know, what if Ripple could do like 100%? Well, they're not going to do 100%, but apparently doing, of course, excuse me, parts of these surveys, right? Boston Consultancy Group, you could clearly see here that this is going to be the dominant forces, whether it's Quant, whether it's obviously Ripple, and that is definitely worth sharing and definitely worth pointing out. Next part I want to get into, shout out to Smoke. SBI Holdings will begin handling RLUSD issued by Ripple with this fiscal year. And like it says, expect RLUSD integration announcement from SBI. Again, why am I pointing out things like SBI? Well, I want you guys to keep in mind that when we talk about SBI, well, back to this. Back to the citation from Ripple. I didn't get the chance to get down to that part of the page. CB Insights data included the report found that banks participated in 33 blockchain-related mega round funding deals, 100 million plus, between 2020 and 2024. Institutions such as JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and the SBI Group were especially active investors and participated in multiple funding rounds for firms developing blockchain-based financial infrastructure. Yeah, that's right. And like it says, top use cases, institutional infrastructure. So boom, there's your Quant. And even Quant's been making some of that, I guess you could say, headway when it comes to staking. And like it says, tokenization. So again, institutional, internet of value. Then you got Ripple with internet of value. Quant, internet of trust. Ripple with what? XRP literally being the unified ledger. Some people don't agree with that. Go watch some of the research. Look at some of the documents. If you're not convinced that basically Ripple is the IMF, then I don't even know what to tell you. But you have to take the time to listen and watch some of that stuff. Of course, it would be, you know, the typical people who just jump right to the comments and be like, no. No, why? Oh, because they said so. Well, God bless them, right? Anyway, it helps paint a clearer picture of how the banks are shaping their long-term digital asset strategies through targeted investments. Yeah, and it's going to be inevitable. I would agree with that. All right, how about this also? Back to the whole thing of SBI. So, yes, we are talking about SBI just briefly. I know this is some of the deepest dives, but, I mean, again, that's what I do. Some people just want a quick 30-second short or something like that. That's all the time you have for some of the biggest generational wealth of your entire life. But okay, I get it. We'll join the 1% club, the new 1%. And I guess some of these people will join whatever percentage they want to join too, right? Nothing against them. All right. SBI Group seeks business expansion with two types of stablecoins. For one, USD backed and JPY backed. You will see another card. They'll take you to another video. Now, on that video is a live one because I didn't take the liberty to chop it up. But I'll at least try to pointing to the right direction because it's JPYD, and of course Jasmy's looking to do their own stablecoin in that regard. So I'm telling you, that's going to be big for Jasmy, and if you were interested in that, check out that video. So look what we have here. USD backed stablecoin, expanding USD's use cases in Japan through JV with Circle. And by all means, I meant to give him a shout out again. I want to give a shout out to Smoke. You need to follow Smoke. He can be followed over at SMQKEDQG. Okay. See, that only took 5 seconds. How many people cite people's research and they don't even give him a shout out? My goodness. Like, what is wrong with people nowadays? Anyway, just a gripe I have. But I want to highlight this. So seek to begin handling RLUSD issued by Ripple within the fiscal year. And again, that's interesting. It's definitely interesting because, like Smoke is pointing out here, expect RLUSD integration announcement from SBI. Yeah, you want to know another thing? Brother Smoke, we love you, bro. But also expect JPYD announcement from SBI because Genki Oda, who is literally a chairman over there at SBI, I think he's also the head, if I'm not mistaken, in some capacity. You have that Jasmy plug. And so that's going to be huge for Jasmy. All right, enough about Jasmy for a brief moment. Let's take you over to here. More about this from SBI Holdings. July 2025, SBI Holdings document projects major gains for the company as Ripple IPO is set to reveal the true value of Escrowed XRP. Most people aren't realizing this. I probably could have chopped this up in 5, 6, 7 videos, but it is what it is. I'm going to do me and let other people do themselves. So the valuation of XRP held in escrow by Ripple Lab Inc. will not be reflected in the company's valuation until a definitive price is established, such as like through an IPO or other means. Significant gains expected once the valuation of Ripple is clarified through an IPO. And he says it's documented. So we're going to pull this up for just a brief moment. This is obviously what you see from SBI. They posted this literally July 31st, 2025, so just a few days ago, right? And the other area is this: significant gains expected, like it says, once the valuation of stake in in Ripple, like 9% is clarified through IPO or equivalent event. And then, boom, like what also says here is on the bottom of the highlight, over the past year, the price of XRP, let me zoom in more because I guess, a lot of people are on their phones. The price of XRP has more than quadrupled. There's still people coming to the comments. I got this one guy, he's just like, you say the same stuff year after year. He's like, all you XRP enthusiasts are clowns. He's like, the price hasn't moved much. Really? Well, last I checked, I did 11x on my investment. How well did you do on your XRP? Are you even invested in your XRP? All right. I get it. Maybe you guys don't want me to point out some of the comments, but that's okay too. I don't read them all, right? I do have thick skin, literally. Got to lose some more weight. But anyway, again, I just want to point out some of these other things. So again, back to what you see from Ripple, okay? Why point this out? So this is from Ripple. Look what mentions on the bottom. It says, for example, a business that services customers in more challenging corridors, for example, Latin America, Africa, and parts of Asia, should look for a stablecoin payment provider. Think about that. Provider that can support on-ramps and off-ramps in those markets. Alternatively, a business using stablecoin for corporate treasury needs to ensure the provider offers transparency of reserves and compliance-focused transactions. By definition, I don't know if people are aware of this, everything you see there, Quant offers. Now you may be saying, oh, I want to see it. Show it to me. Or as Palpatine would say, do it. Give it to the Overledger. Well, check this out. What do we have here? Blockchain for banking, news, technology, media, telecoms. This is from Ledger Insights. And boil it, mash it, stick it in stew. IDB-backed LACCHAIN tokenizes city payments, partners with Overledger. How you like that? Mic drop, baby. That's what I'm talking about. So with that said, there you guys have it. It's all there. Jam-packed with tons of info. And let's face it, most won't even bother listening to the end, and that's okay. Some people just want the quick 15 minutes, and sometimes I do that. But do me a solid if you listen to this entire outline and type in this key phrase into the comments, and that is XRP QNT Web 3. And I'll know that you listened to the entire outline. The saying goes, know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD 110%. May the Lord Jesus bless each and every one of you. We'll see you on the next one. Over and out. How would you like to earn an extra $100, $200, or even $500 a day, even more than that? I have many friends that are earning money every single day trading futures on BTCC. It's a simple process, and even if you don't want to learn how to trade, you could follow a trader on the site and let him do the trading for you. I'm currently following numbers, not feelings, so even if you don't know how to trade, there is a way to make money. But I suggest learn how to trade, earn you some extra money on BTCC. It's easy, you don't have to KYC, and you don't have to use a virtual private network VPN. This is a wonderful site. They've been around since 2011. Give them a shot. Also, when you earn that extra money, you can store that on your Decent wallet. The Decent wallet was not affected by the recent XRPL debacle, where the backdoor of many wallets was open and there was a breach. So Decent wallet was not affected by that. Decent wallet is as safe as you keep your seed phrase. It's a wonderful product, and you can get the discount by using the link. It's the only way to get the affiliate discount, and that is to use an affiliate link. So that link is popping up on the upper right side of your screen, and it is the one that you will use. You will also get free shipping. Pick you up a Decent wallet today. Secure your assets. If you don't have them stored in a wallet and sitting on an exchange, then you're at risk. So pick you one up today.